The radio tower in Siberia. The first voice I heard belonged to a dead man. At least that is what the police report said. I didn't know that at that time. All I knew was that I was alone in the Siberian wilderness, nearly 80 miles from the nearest settlement, and someone was calling for help through a radio system that hadn't worked properly in over 20 years. The transmission began at 2:13 in the morning, a burst of static. Then a man's voice, weak, panicked, breathing hard. Can anyone hear me? The signal crackled. I have been walking for hours. A pause. Heavy breathing. Then the words that still haunt me. Something is following me through the trees. The transmission ended abruptly. And 3 days later, I learned that the voice belonged to a man who had disappeared in 1997. My name is Anton Volkov. For nearly a decade, I worked as a communication technician, maintaining remote radio infrastructure across northern Russia. Most assignments were routine: repair a damaged antenna, replace equipments, inspect weather station. The work was lonely, but I enjoyed it. I liked the silence. At least I thought I did. The assignment that changed everything arrived in January in 2021. A government communication agency reported unusual activity at an abandoned Soviet era radio tower deep in eastern Siberia. The facility had officially been decommissioned in the late 1980s. No staff, no power, no operational equipment. Yet nearby monitoring station occasionally detected weak transmission originating from its frequency range. Most engineers assume atmospheric interference, equipment ghost, random noise. My job was simple: travel to the site, inspect the tower, determine whether any hardware remained functional, then file a report. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, at least on paper. The tower stood in one of the most isolated places I have ever visited, an endless expanse of the frozen forest, thousands of square miles of wilderness. No roads, no villages, no cell service, nothing. A helicopter dropped me off shortly before sunset. The pilot helped unload my supplies. Then he glanced toward the tower. His expression changed slightly. You staying overnight? I nodded. 3 days. The pilot hesitated, then shrugged. Keep the radio on. Why? He looked away. Just keep it on. Before I could ask more questions, he climbed back into the helicopter. Minutes later, I was alone. Completely alone. The silence felt enormous. The tower itself was enormous. A rusting steel structure rising nearly 400 feet above the forest. The attached operation building looked abandoned. Broken windows, peeling paint, snow piled against the walls. Yet something immediately felt wrong. There were footprints, fresh footprints, dozens of them, leading toward the building, none leading away. I stared at them for a long moment. The snow had fallen heavily during the previous night. Those tracks could have been more than a day old. Someone had visited recently, maybe hunters, maybe trespassers. I told myself not to overthink it, but a feeling of unease settled over me anyway. Inside the building smelled of rust and old dust. Most equipment had been stripped decades earlier. Empty racks lined the walls. Broken control panels sat beneath layers of cream. Yet one room stood out, the communications room. Unlike the rest of the facility, it appeared recently disturbed. Dust had been cleared from several surfaces. A chair sat pulled away from a desk, and an ancient radio console showed signs of recent use. That made no sense. The system had no power source, no generators, no batteries, nothing. Yet when I touched the equipment, it felt warm. Not hot, warm, as though someone had been operating it shortly before my arrival. A cold sensation crawled up my spine. I checked the entire building. No people, no animals, no signs of occupations. Nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had left only moments earlier. Night arrived quickly. The temperature dropped below minus 30 degrees Celsius. Outside, the forest vanished into darkness. I prepared dinner. Reviewed equipment logs. Tried distracting myself. Around midnight, the radio activated by itself. A sudden burst of static filled the room. I nearly jumped out of my chair. The equipment should not have worked. There was no power, no functioning transmitter, nothing. Yet static continued hissing through the speakers. Then came the voice, a man, breathing heavily, running, branches snapping somewhere nearby. Can anyone hear me? I froze. The voice sounded terrified, not staged, not distorted, terrified. Please, more heavy breathing. I think it is still behind me. Static surged, then silence. For several seconds, I simply stared at the radio, trying to understand what I had heard. The transmission returned, this time weaker, further away. I can hear it walking. A pause. Then, it's copying me. The signal died. The room fell silent. I looked at the radio. The radio looked back. Or at least, that how it felt. Like something had just used it to reach me. Something that should not have been able to. I barely slept. Every creak of the building sounded louder than it should have. Every gust of wind felt deliberate. Around dawn, I checked the exterior of the facility. The footprints from yesterday remained. But now there were new ones. Fresh tracks circling the building. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. As though someone had spent the entire night walking around the tower. Round the round. Never approaching the door. Never leaving. Just circling. Watching. Waiting. And among those tracks, I noticed something else. A second set, bare feet, in the snow. Miles from civilization in temperature cold enough to kill a person within minutes. The footprints continued into the forest and disappeared between the trees. That should have been the moment I requested immediate extraction. Instead, I made the mistake that changed everything. I followed them, and deep within the frozen forest, I found a place that was not marked on any map, a place that should never have existed, a clearing filled with radio towers, dozens of them, hidden among the trees, and every single one was pointing directly at the abandoned Soviet station. The same static where, at exactly 2:13 every morning, the dead began calling for help. For a long time, I simply stood there staring at the clearing. The forest around me was silent. Not normal silence, not the quiet that comes with snowfall. This felt different, heavy, oppressive, as if the entire wilderness were holding its breath. The tower stretched between the trees like a rusted skeletons. Some stood 30 feet tall, others were little more than twisted metal frames. Most looked decades old, abandoned, forgotten. Yet something immediately stood out. Cables, fresh cables. Black insulated wiring ran across the snow, connecting tower to tower before disappearing beneath the forest floor. Someone had been maintaining this place. Recently, very recently, a cold feeling settled in my stomach because, according to every map and government document I had reviewed, this clearing did not exist. I followed the cables deeper into the forest. After several minutes, they led me to a small concrete structure buried beneath the snow. At first, I glanced. It resembled an old utility bunker. A heavy steel door stood partially open. Rust covered most of its surface. The lock had long since been removed. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to leave. Instead, I stepped inside. The air smelled stale, old, like something sealed away for decades. A narrow staircase descended underground. My flashlight illuminated faded Soviet markings on the walls. Most had become unbearable, unreadable, but one word remained visible: 3 into 0 echo. The bunker extended farther than I expected. Several rooms contained equipments, most of it destroyed: broken monitors, rotting cables, corroded electronics. Then I found the records room. Metal filling cabinets lined the wall. Hundreds of the folders remained stacked inside. Many had deteriorated beyond recognition. Others remained surprisingly intact. One file immediately caught my attention: Project Echo, classified 1988. My hand shook slightly as I opened it. The document inside described a communication experiment. At least that was the official explanation. The Soviet military had apparently attempted to develop a long range transmission system capable of penetrating remote regions without conventional infrastructure. The technology relied on atmospheric reflection. Radio was manipulation, advanced signal processing, nothing unusual. Until I reached the final pages. That's where the languages changed. Technical reports gave way to handwritten notes, observations, warnings, statements that made no sense. One note read, "The system no longer requires a transmitter." Another, "Signals are being received from unknown origins." And finally, "The voices appear aware of the operators." I stared at those words: aware, not recorded, not replayed, aware. Something crashed somewhere above me. The sound echoed through the bunker. I nearly dropped the folder. For several seconds I remained frozen, listening nothing. Then another sound, a footstep, directly above the ceiling, slow, heavy, deliberate. Someone was walking across the snow outside. I switched off my flashlight immediately. Darkness swallowed the room. The footstep continued. One, two, three, crossing the roof. Then stopping directly above me. Silence followed. A full minute passed. Then another. Finally, the footsteps resumed, moving away into the forest. Only then did I breathe again. I returned to the radio station before sunset. The entire walk back I felt watched. Several times I stopped suddenly and looked behind me. Nothing, only trees, snow, darkness gathering between the tongues. Yet the feeling persisted, the sensation that someone remained just beyond sight, following, matching my pace, waiting. That night I reviewed the bunker documents again. Most of the material seemed incomplete. Large sections had been removed. Entire pages were missing, almost as if someone had deliberately erased most important details. Around midnight, another transmission arrived. This time the voice belonged to a woman crying, whispering, barely audible beneath the statics. I found the tower. Silence. Then I thought I was alone. A pause, heavy breathing, then a sentence that made my blood run cold. Something keeps answering me from the trees. The transmission ended. A few minutes later, another voice appeared. A different person, a different year, a different story. Yet the same fear, the same panic, the same ending. By 2 in the morning, I had heard 6 separate transmissions, 6 different people, all lost, all terrified, all reporting the same thing. Something in the forest was copying them, learning their voices, repeating their words, following them through the trees. At exactly 2:30 am, everything changed. The radio activated again. Static filled the room. Then came a voice I recognized immediately, my own. I froze. Every muscles in my body locked. Then speaker crackled. Then I heard myself breathing fast, panicked, running, branches snapping nearby. The record then recording sounded incredibly clear, not distorted, not distant, clear. as though someone had placed a microphone inches from my face. Then my voice spoke. I can see the lights. My stomach dropped. I had never said those words. The transmission continued. Don't go into the forest. Static surged briefly. Then, if you are hearing this, it is already too late. I stared at the radio in disbelief. The voice sounded exactly like mine. Every detail, every inflection, perfect. Then came the final sentence. The sentence that will wake me up some nights. My voice whispered. Whatever answered the radio is not human. The transmission ended. Silence returned. And for several moments I simply sat there, unable to move, unable to think, because deep down I knew one thing. There was not a recording. It was a warning for me, but not from my version of me that had existed yet. I didn't sleep at all. At dawn, I made a decision. I was leaving. The inspection could wait. The report could wait. Whatever was happening in that forest was not worth understanding. I packed my equipment quickly, prepared the emergency satellite beacon, and stepped outside. Then I saw the footprints. Fresh tracks covered the snow around the building. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, far more than before. They surrounded the station completely. Some belonged to boots, others to bare feet. Some looked human, others did not. The shapes were wrong, the proportion impossible, as though something had attempted to imitate human footprints without fully understanding how feet worked. I followed one trail with my eyes. It led toward the forest, toward the clearing, toward the hidden towers. Then I noticed something else, words written in the snow. A single sentence stretching across the clearing outside the station. The letters looked as though they had been carved by dozens of different hands, some large, some small, some barely legible. Yet together they formed a message directed at me. It read, We heard your voice first. And from somewhere deep within the forest, a radio began transmitting, not from the station, not from the bunker, from the trees themselves. A voice echoed through the wilderness, my voice, calling my name. My voice echoed through the forest, calling my name again and again and again. The sound different between the trees from different direction at once, sometimes to my left, sometimes behind me, sometimes directly ahead. Like dozens of radios are broadcasting the same transmission simultaneously. I stood frozen outside the station. The cold air burned my lungs. The forest remained motionless, yet my voice continued calling, patiently, almost gently, as if it warned me to follow it. And eventually, against every instinct I did. The signal led me back toward the hidden clearing. Snow fell steadily through the darkness. The radio voices guided me deeper into the wilderness. Every few minutes, another transmission joined it. Different voices, men, women, children, all speaking at once. Fragments of conversation, panic, warnings, prayers, desperate pleas for help. The voices were lapped until they became impossible to separate. A wall of human fear drifting through the trees. Then suddenly everything stopped. The silence was immediate, absolute. I emerged into the clearing and my heart nearly stopped. Every tower was active. Red warning lights blinked across the forest. Dozens of towers, maybe hundreds. The entire clearing pulsed with synchronized flashes. Power cables vibrated beneath the snow. A low hum filled the air. The sound felt less like machinery and more like breathing, slow, rhythmic, alive. At the center of the clearing stood something I had not noticed before, a much large tower, hidden by darkness during my first visit. It rose above all the others, at least 600 feet tall, perhaps more. Its upper section disappeared into the snowfall. The structure looked wrong. Not Soviet, not modern, not anything I recognized. The metal seemed unusually smooth, almost organic, as if it had grown, as if it had grown rather than been built. As if it had grown rather than been built. And every cable in the clearing connected to it. A narrow path led toward the base. As I approached, the radio clip to my jacket activated. Static erupted from the speaker. Then a voice emerged. The same man from the first transmission, the one who disappeared in 1997. His breathing sounded fanatic, terrified. Don't go near it. Static crackled. Then another voice interrupted. A woman. I thought it was a rescue beacon. Another interruption, a child. It's learning. Then dozen more voices spoke simultaneously, all overlapping, all desperate. The same warning repeated through the chaos. Don't let it hear you. The base of the tower contained an entrance. A steel door stood partially open. Warm air drifted from inside. Warm in the middle of a Siberian winter. I should have turned around. Instead, I entered the corridor beyond, descended underground. The deeper I went, the warmer the air became. Soon the temperature felt almost comfortable, impossible. Not abundant facility should have had power. No facility should have survived this long. Yet somewhere beneath the forest, something was still operating, something enormous. The staircase eventually opened into a chamber unlike anything I had ever seen. I still struggle to describe it. The room was not filled with machinery, at least not normal machinery. Thousands of cables descended from the ceiling. Bundles of wire stretched across the walls, yet they were not connected to computers. They disappeared into something far stranger, a massive central structure, dark, towering, pulsing faintly. At first I thought it was a metal, then I realized it was not. It moved very slightly, lagged muscles beneath the skin. My flashlight trembled in my hand. The structure had extended upward beyond sight, connected directly to the tower above, connected to every tower in the forest, and embedded throughout its surface were speakers. Thousands of them, old speakers, new speakers, military radios, civilian radios, communication devices from different decades, different countries, different eras, all wired into the same thing, all listening, all transmitting. The radio on my jacket activated again. This time the voice was mine, calm, steady, not frightened. Now you understand? I stared at the speaker. My mouth had gone completely dry. What is this? I whispered. For several seconds, only static answered. Then my voice returned. It is not receiving signal. A pause. It's collecting them. The words echoed through the chamber. Collecting, not receiving, collecting. Then I understood. The missing people, the voices, the warning, the transmissions. The tower was not communicating across distance, it was communicating across time. A sudden moment drew my attention. Shapes emerged from the darkness surrounding the chamber, human figures, dozens of them, standing silently among the cables. At first I thought they were workers. Then my flashlight illuminated their face. My stomach dropped. The faces matched photographs from the missing person reports. The man from 1997, the woman from 2003, a hunter who vanished in 2011, others, many others, all standing perfectly still. Their eyes remained open, yet none of them seemed fully awake or fully alive. Something had been preserved, recorded, copied, stored. I don't know the correct word. Only that they looked wrong, like radio transmission wearing human bodies. The nearest figure suddenly turned toward me, then another and another. Within seconds, every face in the chamber was looking directly at me. The radio exploded with voices, hundreds of voices, thousands, all speaking simultaneously. The sound was unbearable. The chamber trembled. The great structure pulsed faster. The speaker screamed, and amid the chaos, one sentence emerged clearly, not from the radio, from the root cell itself. A voice impossible to locate, a voice made from every other voice. It asked, "Will you stay?" The question echoed through the darkness again and again and again. "Will you stay?" The figure began moving toward me slowly, not threatening, not aggressive, almost hopeful, as though they wanted me answer, as though they had been waiting for years, for decades, perhaps longer. I ran. The memory became fragmented after that. Stairs, snow, darkness, the forest, branches tearing at my across, the endless sound of the voices behind me. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until the first light of the dawn appeared through the trees. Then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital 3 days later. A rescue helicopter had found me wandering nearly 20 miles from the tower, hypothermic, disoriented, unable to explain where I had been. When authorities investigated the site, they found nothing, no hidden clearing, no underground bunker, no additional towers, only the abandoned Soviet station, exactly as it appeared on the official map. The rest was gone, as though it had never existed. I resigned from my position 6 months later, moved to another city, started over. For years, I avoided radios entirely. No scanners, no broadcast, nothing. Eventually, life became normal again, or at least normal enough. Then, last winter, something happened. I was driving home during a snowstorm. A local radio station was playing music, ordinary music, nothing unusual. Without warning, the signal cut out. Static filled the car. Then a voice emerged, my voice, older than before, tired, defeated, and speaking from somewhere far away. The transmission lasted only 4 seconds, just long enough for me to hear one sentence, one final warning, a warning I don't understand. The voice said, "Don't answer when they call back." Then the music returned, as if nothing had happened. That was 14 months ago. Since then, I have occasionally noticed strange interferences on radio, television, emergency broadcast, airport announcement. The interruption never lasts more than a second or two. Most people don't notice, but I do. Because hidden beneath the statics, I can hear voices, thousands of them, whispering, calling, repeating names. Sometimes names from missing person report, sometimes names from news stories, sometimes names I have never heard before. And recently, I have started hearing one name more than any other, my own. Last week I bought a new radio, I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe fear, habit. I turned it on at exactly 2:13 in the morning. The frequency was empty, only static. For nearly a minute, nothing happened. Then a voice emerged, weak, distant, panic, breathing hard, running through trees the same way the first transmission began years ago. Only this time I recognized the voice immediately. It was me. And just before the signal disappeared, I heard myself say, "Can anyone hear me?" Then transmission ended there. But I already knew what came next because I have heard that recording before. It was the very first voice that led me to the tower, the voice of the dead man, the voice I thought belonged to someone who vanished in 1997. I was wrong. The voice had always belonged to me. And somewhere, and somewhere out there beyond the statics, beyond the forest, beyond whatever project ego awakened, something is still listening.